It is no longer news that the newly elected president of Senegal wants the best for his country. Senegal has declared that mining and oil contracts will be renegotiated for the benefit of the local populace. Industry participants and experts have expressed concern and attention to this approach. Although the goal of the renegotiation is to give the local community's well-being a top priority, there are worries about the possible hazards this could bring to future collaborations and investments. So, in today's video, we shall examine the implications and viewpoints about Senegal's renegotiation of mining and oil contracts. Before we continue, make sure you like this video and subscribe to the new tourist channel to get all updates on Bassirou Diomaye Faye. Also, let us know in the comments what you want Senegal's new president to do concerning these negotiations. Early this month, Senegal's newly appointed Minister of Mines and Energy declared that the government would renegotiate mining, oil, and gas contracts should a promised audit be completed. President Bassirou Diomaye Faye, who defeated the ruling coalition candidate in a landslide election victory last month, announced the audit after his inauguration on April 2, assuring investors they were still welcome in the West African country. The renegotiation of such contracts with foreign businesses in Senegal is one of the more extreme campaign promises that Faye's new coalition administration is prepared to follow through on. The strategy is in contrast to Macky Sall, Faye's predecessor, who had a more investor-friendly stance but was unable to reduce Senegal's rising cost of living or generate enough jobs through his ambitious infrastructure-focused plan. Politicians and business analysts have advised Senegal's new president against renegotiating mining and oil contracts. Speaking through his Energy and Mines Minister Birame Souleye Diop on April 11, Faye stated that following the completion of the anticipated audit, the government would renegotiate contracts related to mining, oil, and gas if needed. The concern stems from the potential impact on investment and future partnerships. Some experts argue that the renegotiation could deter investors due to uncertainties and potential changes in the terms of the contracts. This could have implications for developing the oil and mining sectors in Senegal. Bear in mind that on the campaign road, Faye, the youngest democratically elected president of Africa, pledged to give priority to renegotiating contracts related to oil and gas. He emphasized that the contracts the people in power had signed were very unfavorable to Senegal. However, Woodside Energy, an Australian company that works with Petrosen in the Sangomar oil field in central western Senegal, has pleaded with the government to respect contract sanctity. Note that Australia's Woodside Energy opens a new tab that holds 82% of Senegal's offshore Sangomar oil and gas field, which is expected to start oil production in mid-2024. Senegal's former president, Macky Sall, told a news agency that this decision to renegotiate mining contracts could come with consequences. Frankly, thinking that we can change the contracts already signed with the companies is not possible. That would be a disastrous turn for Senegal, Sall said. The Senegalese state will get up to 60% of future oil and gas profits, according to papers from the previous administration and the Extractive Industries Transparency Initiative. According to Ibrahim Abakir Dram, a former Petrosen communications manager, explicit renegotiation clauses do not exist in oil contracts, but rather clauses that regulate potential disputes. Dram suggests that oil contracts might not explicitly mention the ability to renegotiate the terms in the future. This doesn't necessarily mean renegotiation is impossible, but it's not explicitly laid out as an option from the beginning. Instead of explicit renegotiation clauses, Dram suggests these contracts likely have clauses that focus on resolving potential disputes that may arise during the contract period. These dispute resolution mechanisms could be arbitration or specific procedures for addressing disagreements. What does this imply? The absence of explicit renegotiation clauses can lead to uncertainty for both parties, government and oil companies, if circumstances change significantly. The focus is on resolving disagreements within the framework of the existing contract, rather than rewriting the terms entirely. If a major change also occurs, dispute resolution mechanisms might not be sufficient to address the need for a significant overhaul of the contract. Dram cautioned that a renegotiation of contracts would be a risky business, and the reputation of Senegal around the world of investment could put off potential suitors. It is important to remember that in less developed fields, like Senegal's Icar gas field, which is still in the early stages of development, the renegotiation process might be easier. The renegotiation procedure might be simpler because there haven't been any significant expenditures made in these areas yet. This implies that the renegotiation's risks could change based on the particular projects involved and where they are in the development process. One of President Bassirou's campaign pledges of radical reform was to give local population welfare first priority. The goal of this contract renegotiation is to guarantee that the advantages of these sectors are shared more fairly and benefit the surrounding community. Note that shortly after taking office, Bassirou gave his prime minister instructions to create an urgent action plan aimed at bolstering the faltering national economy and finances. He obviously knows what he wants and is doing everything in his power to get it done. The International Monetary Fund has forecast that Senegal's upcoming oil and gas production will boost economic growth to double digits next year. So, you now understand why Bassirou is concerned with this. Despite never having held political office, the 44-year-old easily won an election last month on a promise of radical reform, making history as the youngest president of the country. According to a statement issued following Faye's first cabinet meeting, he gave his prime minister and former mentor, Ousmane Sonko, until the end of the month to create an action plan. It is okay to say that these negotiations are part of the action plan. He ordered Sonko to carry out a general review of programs and plans and report on the general situation of the public finances, international cooperation, and public-private partnerships. He gave the government strict instructions to complete the plan by the end of the month and to immediately implement a bold policy to relaunch the national economy with the Senegalese private sector. A profound breakaway and a transformation at all levels of economic and social life in the nation were his two main campaign promises to the ministers. Bear in mind that Senegal has an 18 million person population, with 1 in 3 living in poverty and a 20% unemployment rate. The impact of the war in Ukraine and the COVID pandemic have also hurt the country's economy. The last 3 years of social and political unrest have damaged investment, and debt and inflation are at an all-time high. According to Sonko, the government's top aims are to preserve human rights, cut living expenses, and provide jobs for young people. It is worth noting that the implications of these negotiations could have significant effects on the oil and gas industry in Senegal and the country's plans to become an oil producer. The government wants to make sure that the contracts are in the best interests of the nation. However, the specifics of how the contracts will be restructured have not been disclosed. This may result in modifications to the contract's terms and conditions, revenue sharing, and other provisions. Investors can keep a close eye on the discussion's conclusion and evaluate how stable and alluring the investment climate is. Nonetheless, Senegal is a popular destination for investments due to its favorable legal and regulatory environment, as well as its policies that prioritize the protection of individual investors. The government's dedication to openness and equitable benefit distribution might support preserving investor confidence. Senegal has approached international organizations for support to bolster its institutional capabilities to better negotiate intricate agreements within the extractive industries. For instance, the World Bank has offered technical support to make sure that initiatives for the development of oil and gas are in line with public interests and draw funding from the private sector. This partnership may help ensure that contracts are successfully renegotiated and that Senegal's oil and gas industry grows sustainably. The renegotiation of mining and oil contracts in Senegal has been considered risky because of the possible obstacles and uncertainties involved. Even while the nation aims to distribute resources fairly and optimize its economic gains, renegotiations include certain inherent dangers. The government must perform a careful balancing act because of the unstable nature of the mining and oil sectors, as well as the difficulties involved in negotiating contracts. Note that Bassirou has a lot going on right now and does not have just these contracts to deal with. One of his promises was to purge the colonial currency used in West Africa, the CFA franc. This plan falls in line with the plans that Burkina Faso, Niger, and Mali had in February when they mentioned that they are making plans to ditch the colonial CFA franc currency. Senegal under outgoing President Macky Sall was a pillar of the long-standing French attempt to remain influential among its former colonies, often named Franc-Afrique. Now newly elected FAI, under the moniker of left Pan-Africanism, has vowed to change the narrative. The Senegalese plan for a national currency would essentially result in the dissolution of the CFA franc zone, and the rate of this collapse will be determined by how successfully they organize and carry out the transition to many new currencies, or a new one that is devoid of French influence. Now, a lot of people are hoping that Senegal's new president will work with Ibrahim Traoré of Burkina Faso and other Sahelian leaders to create a single currency. We are yet to see how this will unfold. Senegal needs to go cautiously with these negotiations. The dangers include the possibility of drawn-out legal disputes, strained relationships with investors, and delays in project execution. In order to preserve investor trust and draw in additional investments, the renegotiation process needs to be carried out openly and transparently, adhering to global best practices. Only then are we going to see better results. In your opinion, do you think renegotiation of these oil and mining contracts will be risky for Senegal? Let us know what you have to say in the comments below. Do not forget to like this video and subscribe to the New Tourist channel. Turn on notifications too so you get notified whenever we upload videos like this. Thanks for watching and see you in our next video.